we needed to focus on customers that had the highest concentration of risk. And so we looked at, if we sold, let's say 10 sensors per home, how many homes would I have to get to for the company to sell 100,000, 200,000 sensors, right? A lot of homes, which means you have sort of this inverted problem of, let's say, tens of thousands of homes as individual customers, then coming back to one small business. And if there's issues, or whether it be technical or claims related, you would have this tail wagging the dog scenario. And so when I looked at multifamily, I was like, okay, that's a really big industry, but it's heavily concentrated in the hands, at least in the top 10% of the market, in about 50 huge clients, right? And 50 clients seemed a lot more appealing to handle than tens of thousands of customers. So the way I looked at it was, we could be very efficient, because if you look at a 100,000 square foot building, or bigger, and you compare that to the similar building of similar size, but in the office space, for example, where they also have water running through the building, you'd recognize that an office building doesn't have 350 kitchens, right? An office building might have 15 or 16 kitchens, but the same size multifamily building could easily have 200 to 300 kitchens, right? As technology and buildings evolve, you will start to see more standardization across different safety measures, right, within a building, whether it's security, video cameras, whatnot. So I'm just drafting, where are we today? I think certain technologies clearly exist, in fire suppression. Certain technologies clearly exist in access control and video monitoring and safety on the property. When we're talking about like physical risk and safety when it comes to water, today, how are we responding to the problem of 14,000 people every day filing an insurance claim on the consumer side, and countless businesses doing it on the having to experience claims on the commercial side? I think it's a very reactive model, right? Something happens and people respond, right? And so oftentimes when I walk a building with like a building engineer or a maintenance crew, I'm asking them, like, where have you historically had issues in the building? Because nobody knows a building better than the actual like chief engineer or the guys who interact with it every single day, right? And I feel like oftentimes there's a disconnect between sort of the ground team, the property management team in some cases, and then asset management, right? And then maybe even above that on the risk management side. So when you look at that stack of people who care about the physical and economic life of a property, you start first with the people who have to do the hand-to-hand combat, fixing the problem or reacting to the problem. You need to file a renter's insurance claim for negligence. How did you not know the water heater was leaking? Like, we see all, and then the main property casualty insurance company is saying, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to subrogate it and push it back on, onto the renter's insurance. The renter's insurance is pushing it back on the property casualty insurance. So depending on what the insurance sort of stack looks like, you have infighting there. So I'm painting a picture of, like, there's this domino effect that's happening between the first line of defense, the residents that are being impacted, the physical property being impacted, the stress at the property management level, down to the insurance company, and perhaps even the performa of the asset when you're dealing at the asset management level, depending on how bad this actually is. Well, so you've got all these people that are now stressed out about the situation. You say, well, how, like, what are they doing about it? Well, it happens, and like, whatever. It's just part of doing business. You never know when this is going to happen. Sometimes you have capex that, if it's bad enough that will cover this. In some cases, it's small enough that it just hits OpEx as repair and maintenance. And then next year, when you set the budget, you just use historical budgeting to redo it again, and the snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have to, in commensurate, raise rent, right? Well, in light of like rent pressures sort of being in various markets, sort of not being up and to the right as fast as you'd like, you've got to figure out how to become more operationally efficient, more economically efficient. I mean, no one wants to deal with the noise of getting a bunch of false alerts and false alarms, because that can end up costing you, right? Like, maintenance guys hear a bunch of noise and then they get annoyed, and then they're like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm just going to ignore everything. Well, then the one real serious threat gets ignored. The building gets damaged. The property management team starts playing the blame game. Like, why didn't you respond to this issue? because you've gotten text message, email, and phone call and you didn't deal with this. So I think like what we want to eventually end the blame game, right? Maintenance teams, you're not doing your job. Hey, you're not giving me money to fix these problems, right? And I think like that's an issue in the tension that exists. In the future will be, we knew about it, we dealt with it right away, and if it wasn't a big deal, we dealt with it later, right? And that I think eventually you get to that state of being able to respond more proactively rather than very reactively after it's already shown up and blown up in your building. What is the ROI? It's the risk of ignoring, right? If you do not address this, how are you going to continue handling it? And we've already talked previously in this conversation about what the current state looks like. And it's unacceptable in a world where we have technology that is like affordable and like, in terms of the size of the problem versus the size of the solution, I think it's a no-brainer like you said. I think oftentimes when you have the equation of what is the cost of the solution, what's the cost of the problem, and where's my ROI, I think if you're missing one of the variables, you're going to be scratching your head wondering why they didn't take action. And oftentimes it's because they don't really understand what really does this problem cost us on an annual basis. And can we assume that every year it's going to be like that?